should never have opened it. By morning, only silence remained.
And if you hear the knock, never answer. At the stroke of midnight, someone knocked.
Imagine hearing a knock at your door. But when you open it, there's no one there, just darkness. That's what happened to Claire one chilling midnight. She answered the door and vanished forever. Tonight, you'll hear the terrifying truth. At the edge of town, there stood a house that people rarely spoke about, and if they did, it was always in whispers. It was not abandoned, though it looked like it could be. The shutters rattled on windy nights. The paint peeled off the wooden siding, and the front porch leaned as though it carried the weight of secrets that were never meant to be told. Inside lived a young woman named Claire, who had inherited the place from her grandmother. She had only been there a few weeks, trying to settle in and fix what she could. Claire was not one to believe in ghost stories, urban legends, or the kind of terrifying horror tales people pass down to frighten children. But she was about to become the center of one. On the night it happened, the air was colder than usual for early autumn. The streets outside were empty, swallowed by silence. The old grandfather clock in her hallway ticked softly, its echo bouncing off the narrow walls. Claire was up late reading, sipping on a half-finished cup of tea when she heard it, the knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, the kind that sink into your bones and refuse to leave. She froze, staring at the door from across the room. Who could it be at this hour? Midnight was not a time for visitors. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no texts. Nothing to explain the presence of someone outside her door. At first, she thought about ignoring it. But then the knocks came again, louder this time, and something about the rhythm unsettled her. Not hurried. Not desperate, just patient. Like whoever or whatever stood there had all the time in the world. Against her better judgment, Claire stood and walked slowly to the door. The floorboards creaked under her weight, each step sounding louder than the last. She hesitated as she reached for the handle. "Who is it?" She called out, her voice firmer than she felt. No answer, only silence, and then another knock. This time softer, almost like a whisper against the wood. Her breath caught. She should have called the police, or maybe a friend, but she felt drawn, compelled even to open the door. So she did, and that was the last time anyone saw Claire. The next morning, her neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, noticed the front door hanging slightly open. She thought perhaps Claire had gone out early. But as the day stretched on, there was no sign of her. No footsteps across the garden, no car leaving the driveway, no movement inside the house. By evening, curiosity became worry. When Mrs. Whitaker finally stepped onto the porch to check, she noticed something strange. There was no sound inside. The house felt hollow, empty, yet charged with a stillness that prickled the skin. On the floor by the door lay Claire's teacup, shattered into pieces, the liquid staining the rug. The police were called. They searched the house from top to bottom. Her belongings were still there. Her phone sat on the coffee table. Her jacket hung by the door. But Claire herself had vanished as though the earth had swallowed her whole. What troubled them most was the front door. It showed no sign of forced entry, no scratches, no damage. It was as if Claire had simply opened the door and stepped into nothingness. The investigation went on for weeks. Flares were posted. Interviews conducted. Dogs were brought in, but the trail ended right at the threshold of the house. One of the officers, a man named Detective Harris, became obsessed. Something about the case didn't sit right with him. He started digging into the history of the house, and what he found was enough to make his blood run cold. 50 years earlier, a woman named Evelyn had lived in the same house. One night in October, she too disappeared. Witnesses recalled seeing her answer a knock at the door around midnight, and she was never seen again. 30 years before that, another family had owned the house. Their teenage daughter vanished one stormy night, also last seen opening the front door just after midnight. The stories lined up with a terrifying pattern that no one wanted to admit. Every 30 to 50 years, someone disappeared from that house. Always at midnight, always after answering the door. And they were never found. Harris couldn't shake the thought that Claire hadn't just gone missing, she had been taken. But by what? Or by whom? One night, unable to stop himself, he returned to the house alone. It was well past midnight. He sat in the darkened living room, waiting. The wind rattled the shutters. The old clock chimed 12 times. And then 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, final. Harris's breath hitched. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The door seemed to pull him, demanding his attention. He gripped his flashlight tightly and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. He inched closer, his hand trembling as he reached for the knob. The knocks came again, softer now, almost coaxing. His pulse hammered in his ears. He turned the head. The door creaked open, and what he saw or thought he saw made him stagger back. The porch was empty, the air shimmered, as though the night itself had torn open. Beyond the threshold, instead of the quiet street, he saw a blur. A blackness that seemed alive, whispering, shifting, reaching. He slammed the door shut, his chest heaved. He stopped. The silence returned. He left the house that night, never spoke of what he saw, but others whispered. Some claimed the house. Others believed it was a doorway to somewhere else, a place that took souls and never returned. Claire's disappearance became another chapter, long and terrifying. And though the police officially closed the case, the legend lived on. To this day, people say that if you walk by the house at midnight, you might hear it. 3 knocks, slow, patient, waiting for someone to answer. And if you're foolish enough to open the door, you too will vanish forever. She answered the door at midnight and vanished without a trace, just as others have before her, and just as others will. If this story sent chills on your spine, don't keep it to yourself. Shame that others will. Hit that subscribe button to step deeper into the shadows of Mire Haven. Remember, when the knock comes at midnight, don't answer the door.